Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the EmpowHER session. The energy and utility industry has become more diverse in all aspects. This session will provide insight from women in leadership in energy and utility. We will learn how they navigated their way in a male dominated industry, overcame barriers, gained gender equity in non traditional roles and work environments. Our moderator for today is Nicole Leon. Nicole serves as Con Edison's Director of Diversity and Inclusion. To many, true workplace equality seems like a pipe dream, but to Nicole, it's no less than the motivating principle behind her daily endeavors. In her role as director, Nicole monitors compliance with equal employment opportunity policies and anti discrimination laws. She's handled leadership training, succession planning, and development initiatives. At the end of this session, if you'd like to leave questions or comments, please post them in the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Nicole Leon.
Good morning. Thanks, Khalees. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in what will be an exciting and really informative session with women leaders in the utility industry and in the energy industry. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today. I think you'll be excited to hear each of their stories about their journeys, their perspectives on leadership, and some of the work and just advice that they will offer to you. So first, panelist is Frances Resheske. She is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Affairs from Con Edison. Good morning, Frances. Ms. Resheske oversees Con Edison's corporate communications, community relations, economic development, branding, advertising, marketing, and corporate philanthropy. In addition to our government relations, regulatory relations, and energy market policy group. She is a member of our corporate leadership team. Ms. Resheske is also a corporate board member of Con Edison Transmission, Inc. and the Clean Energy Businesses. Ms. Resheske served as a board member of BAM, the Lincoln Center Women's Leadership Council, Grow New York City and Company, the Building Congress and Association for Better New York, and Foundation. She's also a member of the Women's Forum and Chairman Emeritus of Queen's Theater. She's served in leadership positions on numerous nonprofit boards over the years. And before joining Con Edison, Ms. Resheske was the General Manager of Government Relations and Community Development at Keyspan Energy. Previously, she held positions in community relations and economic development in the administration of Mayor Edward I. Koch. Ms. Resheske is a Kellogg Scholar, previously receiving a certificate in professional development from the Wharton School. She is a certified economic development finance professional by the National Development Council and received her certificate in corporate community involvement from the Boston College Carroll School of Management. Ms. Resheske is a summa cum laude graduate of St. John's University with a degree in government and politics. She is a graduate of Leadership America, Leadership New York, and the Rockefeller Fellow Program. Frances, we welcome you to the panel.
Thank you.
Our next panel member joining us is Robin Bramwel-Stewart from Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Deputy Director, Tunnels, Bridges, and Terminals Department. Ms. Bramwel-Stewart serves as the Deputy Director of Toll Operations and Systems for the Tunnels, Bridges, and Terminals Department within the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. In this role, she's responsible for the day-to-day management and oversight of toll revenue collection, customer service, revenue recovery, toll equipment operations, and maintenance. Ms. Bramwel-Stewart oversees one of the nation's busiest transportation networks, which includes the George Washington Bridge, Goethals Bridge, Outer Bridge Crossing, Bayonne Bridge, and Lincoln and Holland tunnels. In addition, she also oversees all customer service efforts for the department, including efforts at the Port Authority Bus Terminal and George Washington Bridge Bus Station. Ms. Bramwel-Stewart also served in several roles since arriving at the Port Authority in 2008. 2019. She was Assistant Director of Capital Planning and Project Management Office, where she oversaw the development and management of the agency's $32 billion 2017-2026 capital plan. She also served as Manager of Policy and Strategic Planning for Port Department, where she worked to develop business and strategic plans and initiatives for the business. Ms. Bramwel-Stewart started her authority career as a Senior Program Manager in the Office of Strategic Initiatives, where she developed broad-based regional transportation initiatives in line with the authority's mission. Before joining the Port Authority, Ms. Bramwel-Stewart was an associate and vice president at JP Morgan Securities, where she worked as a municipal finance banker. A graduate of Howard University and Brooklyn Law School, Ms. Bramwel-Stewart began her career in the New York City Office of Labor Relations and then became a labor and policy analyst in the Office of the Counsel to the Governor of New York. After working in the executive chamber, she became assistant director and chief negotiator in the Governor's Office of Employee Relations. Ms. Bramwel-Stewart currently serves on the boards of the Billion Oyster Project, Poly Prep Country Day School, and served on the industry advisory panel for the Urban Assembly School for Global Commerce, and on several charter school boards in New York and Washington. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you.
Next is Tatiana Rock, National Grid Vice President of Business, Gas Business Enablement Program. Good morning, Tatiana.
Good morning.
Tatiana joined National Grid in 2004 and has worked predominantly in gas operations, including liquefied natural gas. In her current role as Vice President of Gas Business Enablement Program, she's focused on the transformational program that standardizes and simplifies both the processes and the technology our gas teams use to run the business. Through the replacement of multiple aging legacy operational systems and transformation of operations, she's enabled the team to deliver a step change in performance to delivering safer, cleaner, and more affordable energy to their customers. Tatiana is a passionate leader with a background for team building, process improvement, and operational leadership. She has an extensive background in construction and project management. Tatiana has received her Bachelor of Science degree in project management from Wentworth Institute of Technology. She's a membership of the Partnership Incorporated, Women Unlimited, and the American Association of Blacks in Energy, and City Year Boston Women Leadership Breakfast Committee. Tatiana also serves the board of directors of the YW Boston. Ms. Rock is a native of the Boston community where she still resides with her family. Welcome and good morning. The next, our final panelist is Hundley, Vice President of Facilities and Field Services at Con Edison. Ms. Hundley oversees approximately 600 diverse and dynamic team members across Con Edison and Orange and Rockland utilities. She has oversight for the company's real estate group, operation and maintenance of over 40 facilities, which include planning and project management, engineering services, environment, health and safety, and office services. Ms. Hundley is also responsible for all garages throughout Con Edison and O&R, automotive engineering and fleet administration, and the company's logistics and emergency support services. Ms. Hundley's career began at Con Edison 20 years ago in the company's leadership development program, and since then she's held increasing responsibility, a variety of positions in both operations and human resources. In 2014, Ms. Hundley was promoted to Director of Talent Management, where she and her team developed, implemented, and maintained all activities regarding organizational development, employee programs and services, performance management, conflict resolution, recruitment, and data analytics and quality excellence. Before becoming vice president, Ms. Hundley was a general manager in gas operations, where she and her team were responsible for the safety, reliability, and integrity of the gas distribution system in the Bronx. Ms. Hundley holds a BS in Business Management from Johnson C. Smith University, an MBA in Finance and Human Resources from CUNY Baruch. She is a Juris Doctor degree from St. John's University School of Law and is admitted to practice in the state of New York. She's also a recipient of the YMCA Black Achievers in Industry Award and Con Edison's Living Our Values Award, one of the company's highest honors. She's a proud member of the Greenport Greenpoint YMCA board and presently serves on the Finance and Fund Development Committee. She is also a member of the American Associations of Blacks in Energy, New York Metropolitan Area Chapter. Serving her community is a priority, and she takes every opportunity to give back. She's also first vice president of North American Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and takes great pride in delivering innovative and impactful programming to youth and seniors of Washington Heights and Inwood communities. Ms. Hundley is forever indebted to her mother for reminding her to always smile, and her parents for instilling in her and her siblings a can-do attitude. Her favorite scripture is 1 Corinthians 13:13. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. She aspires to be a loving, kind, and compassionate daughter, sister, auntie, friend, and leader who makes her family proud and her organization an inclusive place that values diversity and promotes safety, operational excellence, and a +1 customer experience. Welcome, Myasia.
Thank you, Nicole.
So, for all the attendees, I'm sure just by hearing the bios of the women leaders that we have as our panelists, you will be able to tap into their great resources and insights and perspectives on the energy industry, but also their roles as leaders and their role as women leaders specifically. So, we'll get started with the questions. So, the first question, Frances, is for you. Can you share with us what led to your interest in the energy business?
Sure. So it's actually interesting. You said when you were talking in the bio that I worked for Mayor Koch, and when Mayor Koch lost in the 80s, I started to look around for a job, and I was offered a position in government relations at Brooklyn Union, which is now National Grid. And I really had no interest in it, and I had no idea what a utility was or did. And one of the lessons I would say to young women is don't turn down an opportunity if you don't know what it is, because I was close to turning it down. And I came into the energy business in 1991, 92, and gas had just deregulated, and it was fascinating to me. And I realized all the things that I didn't know, and I just became very interested in energy and continue to be as it changes and evolves in new and different ways.
Frances, thank you for sharing that. As Frances was speaking and talking about her journey into the energy industry, I saw some of you smiling and nodding. So it sounds like that may have been true for some of you. So Robin, would you like to share something about your thoughts around that too?
Yes, absolutely. I too have had an untraditional path, and I think for women generally, it's important to say, don't be afraid to take risk. Don't be afraid to be the person in the room that is learning while everybody else comes with a little bit more knowledge, but know that eventually you'll catch up to everyone. I think a lot of times, a lot of folks feel like if they're not the smartest person in the room, they're not comfortable being there. And, you really do yourself a disservice if you're not willing to take those kinds of risks.
Thank you for that, Robin. Laisha or Tatiana, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I got into the utility business traditionally myself. I was running a construction site, and the construction site was filled with gas lantern that had been running for years, and we had to get them disconnected. And so I called Keyspan and started the conversation of how do we disconnect these lights. And the manager said to me, "You ever thought about working for the utility business?" Just like Branson. I go, "Nope, just been moving along." He's like, "Well, you should send your resume." And I literally just sent the resume and didn't apply to a job. I just sent it into HR, and they called me back and said, "We got a position that we think, would be great for you. Would you come and talk to us?" So to Frances and Robin's point, when these opportunities come, walk through that door, because you never know what's on the other side.
Absolutely. Laisha, thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. I would echo what everyone else said. I think similarly, not the traditional path. Being a New Yorker, what I knew Con Edison to be was just our electric company, not a place that I was going to go and have a career and be able to move around and to grow. So I would echo taking the opportunity, doing some research, and being comfortable that it may not be the industry that we know well, but there's certainly lots of opportunity where we can connect what we're doing and our passions, the skill sets that we have and that we continue to develop.
Thank you for that, ladies. And I think you're all a testament to taking risk and trying something different, because look at where you are now in your careers and the opportunities. So that's a lesson for all of us that we can really learn from. So the next question, Robin, I'm going to ask you for your thoughts around this. What does energy mean to you, and how does it impact your role at the Port Authority?
Well, the Port Authority, for many people, when you talk about the Port Authority, what they hear or what they think of first is the bus terminal, But the Port Authority is actually a much broader organization. We've got airports, we've got the 2 seaports, we have our mass transit system, the freight rail system that we run. And in addition, we have, my portfolio, which is the tunnels, bridges, and terminals. So, our facilities include 2 tunnels and 4 bridges between the state of New York and New Jersey, and 2 bus terminals. They're generally considered all hours of the day must-run operations. And we facilitate the movement of people and goods throughout the region. So in this context, energy can seem like an afterthought against operational demands. However, when you combine that with the organizational objectives, energy market changes, and specific environmental targets, energy and its management become another part of our toolkit. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about the objectives that we have and give you some examples about how those fit in. In October 2018, the Port Authority embraced the Paris Climate Agreement by setting new interim targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and adopting a roadmap for achieving those reductions. The interim target of reducing the Port Authority's own greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2025 is going to demonstrate our progress toward our support of the existing long-term commitment. And we've got a commitment there to reduce emissions related to the agency's facilities by 80% by 2050. In turn, these targets are really steering our efforts toward everything from energy efficiency to electrified transportation. You'll see we are now the proud operators of the largest electrified bus fleet. And we're going to continue pushing forward in this area, and not just encouraging our own operations, but those of tenants that exist in our space, and people using our facilities and coming through our facilities to also start thinking about ways they can be more energy efficient and advancing these goals.
Thank you for that, Robin. Would anyone else like to share, what does energy mean to you, and how does it impact your role in the work that you do?
I can add, I think that energy impacts everything we do, right? It's the basis for our economy. It's the basis for economic development. I certainly think with the current situation, we've seen a change in energy use and the importance of being adaptable to those needs. And I would also say, I think, as much as I don't think our customers think about electricity and energy and utilities at all, I think they are much more involved in a cause-related kind of world, which includes the environment, right? So I think people are wanting more renewables in the energy space, and open to being a little bit more involved in things like maybe a Nest thermostat or energy efficiency measures. So I think that evolution is very, very dynamic right now.
Thank you for that, Francis. Robin, to follow up with your question and to touch back on what you and Francis are both saying, as what are priorities for your company as a large energy user and facility operator? You both alluded to how folks are looking at energy efficiency, going green, the perspectives that we have as a company versus what our customers see and their expectations. So what are your priorities?
So, again, our priorities are really trying to move toward those greenhouse gas emissions. But in addition to that, also being much more thoughtful just about the way we are utilizing energy. We are a proud partner with Con Edison. We participate in the load shedding program that they have during the summer to reduce the amount of energy that we're using during periods of peak demand so that there's enough energy for the rest of the region. We are also very focused around doing things like LED conversions and just being thoughtful about how we are planning for energy usage going forward. One of the things that I worked on when I was in the Port Department was bringing shore power to Brooklyn and providing for, the electrification of ships that were docked in Brooklyn long term so that they would not be increasing the amount of carbon going into the air and really providing a much better environment for folks in that local Red Hook community. And I think for the Port Authority going forward, those are the kinds of initiatives we're looking for, not just ones that benefit us individually, but also enhance the environment that we're living in and the ability of our customers and our neighbors and our communities to improve as well.
Thank you, Robin. Again, you and Francis both talked about energy efficiency and electrification. Tatiana, you're currently in gas. Laisha, you formerly were in gas. Are your priorities any different around energy?
They aren't different. We are very focused on providing a cleaner, more efficient source of energy, but we're also focused on affordable, right? We have a lot of families that just can't afford for us to be operating in a way where costs continuously increase. And so we are continuously looking at how we reduce the cost to be able to supply our customers and finding ways to helping our customers who are struggling to pay their bills between gas, electric, and even food, right? So we do have customers who have those major challenges that we focus on and helping them and families.
Thank you for that. I think a lot of our customers will be happy to know that we do keep them top of mind when decisions are being made. Is there anything to add?
No, I would just echo, regardless of the commodity, our company is committed to clean and reliable energy in the future. And what Francis said, in ensuring that from a social perspective, that our customers are engaged and they understand and they have expectations. So I think, although I haven't served in the gas commodity in our company, that key focus on the clean energy vision for the future and how we deliver on those energy commitments are something that we're all committed to in making that happen in our company.
Great. Thank you, Laisha. So, Laisha, I'm going to follow up with another question for you, but it'll take a little bit of a different spin. So far, we've been focusing on our industry and energy and, the work that we do on a daily basis. Now I'd like to go a little bit more personal about you and your leadership. So can you share with us a mentor that you've had over your career? What one or two pieces of advice did they give you? That you continue to apply today as you can serve as a leader in this ever-evolving industry?
Thanks, Nicole. That is a pivot from the previous questions. I think we've all had mentors. I've had quite a few that I think have shaped me as a leader and just continue to help me and shape me. And if I think about advice, there are three things that have always stood out. And the mentor who gave it to me was actually, it's been over 2 decades ago, this advice. The first was, there's a lot of things we won't be able to control, but my work ethic and my integrity are the two things that I'm always in control of. And so, quite frankly, it is those things that speak for me when I'm not in a room, or speak for me when there's an opportunity or a challenge that's ahead. So, kind of not to waver myself, being responsive, being willing to raise my hand to take on the challenge maybe that others didn't, and always leading with my integrity, because those are the things that I can't control. And then the other piece was not being afraid to shake up the status quo. And I've kind of interpreted that in two ways. One is asking questions, being comfortable with asking questions and not accepting we've always done it this way, or it's okay, or it's been past practice, but sitting in a place where I'm comfortable to ask questions, willing to pivot a bit. But then the second piece of that, I think, just connects to being comfortable in being my authentic self. Part of shaking up the status quo, I think Robin mentioned this, often we are in a non-traditional industry. And so part of the status quo may not look like many of us that have looked. It may not always be women at the table. There may not always be minorities at the table. And I think part of shaking up the status quo is recognizing that we all bring something different and being comfortable with sharing perspectives and experiences and listening to perspectives and experience, because that together is what's going to make us successful. So I still use those now, even in the moments where I'm looking in the mirror, giving myself a Laisha pep talk. But I also use them with my team because they think that transparency is what connects us, but I think it's something that we can all relate to.
Yeah. Thank you, Laisha. Tatiana, would you like to answer that question also?
Yes, I'll just build on top of Laisha's comments because I find them all to be true. The one perspective is mentors, right? I have what I call a board of directors of mentors, and they vary from different levels within the organization and externally, because everyone has a different perspective or have had different experiences that can help and guide me when I have things that I want to talk about. And so one thing I would say is it's not just one mentor, it's several. And sometimes they're in your life for a long time, and sometimes they're in your life for 30 minutes and they've given you some inspiration. So and then knowing that, one of the advices that I still hold true today is being an active listener, right? Listening for understanding, not to just respond. It's very critical to show empathy when you're working with others and to really truly connect to understand what is it that's driving them or what is it that's bringing concerns to help remove some of those challenges, blockages for your team, employees, and or colleagues. And then the other piece I'll add is being vulnerable, right? So sometimes I am that only woman in the room and I don't know as much as everybody else, but I'm okay with saying I may not have the answer right this moment, but I will get it. And I will support and whatever it needs to, and find the answers for you. So it's okay to be vulnerable and show that you have that human side of you and that you're not superwoman, because I think that superwoman title really becomes a detriment for us when everyone thinks and you have to do everything and you can do everything, when in fact we're just human and we're managing the best we can like everyone else.
Great, thank you for that. Francis or Robin, anything to add around advice from mentors?
You know, one thing I think I'd say, and I agree with everything that's been said so far, is I also think that sometimes if we're the only woman in the room, or if you sometimes I think we think we're not as smart as we are, right? Or we'll say something and then someone else says it and you're like, I just said that. So I also think continual learning is good. And I'll give you an example. I sit on the financial oversight committee for the company, and finances, that's not my number one strength. So I would be in these meetings and hear people talking about things and say to myself, like, well, we're not going to get that rate of return, or that's not going to happen politically. But I didn't know the numbers, right? So I took a course at Wharton, and it was really funny. The first day of the course, they said, it's all based on the assumptions, right? So the numbers are not right if the assumptions are not right. And I came back and I had the confidence to ask some questions, and it falls apart if the assumptions aren't right. So I think by like, if you have a niche that you think you're not strong on, challenge yourself. Maybe you are, or maybe you need to learn a little bit more. And the other one thing I'd say is, somebody told me once to ask for what you want. And he said to me, do you think your boss comes to work every day and says, what does Frances want for her career today? Right? And when I thought of it that way, I wasn't as afraid to ask. And you often will have a door open that you might think was not going to be open if you didn't ask.
Thank you, Francis. And Robin?
The best piece of advice that I've ever been given by a mentor was that I should become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And he said to me, if you can master that, there will never be a situation that you're in that you won't be able to deal with. And I think that for a lot of folks, you know, they struggle with kind of putting themselves in situations where they feel like they're going to be uncomfortable. I've made a career out of taking positions in areas where I had little to no experience and learning on the fly. And it's been harrowing at points, and it's been exhilarating at other points. And so, you know, I always try and remember that just settling into that discomfort and knowing that it's never going to last forever, that your career is a bit like a pendulum, and there's constant movement, and whatever position you're in today, tomorrow you're going to be in a different place. You know, those are the things that have kind of been able to keep me moving forward and to allow me to have the career that I've had today.
Great, thank you, Robin. So still along the lines about your unique selves as leaders. So Tatiana, when you consider your personal branding, how do you define it? How do you sustain that brand and also remain dynamic and responsive to things that are changing around you?
So it's interesting because years ago someone said your brand, that you are a business. I am providing a service to my employer. So when you think of it that way, like, how do I want people to see me? How do I want to show up? So my brand has always been that leader with integrity that always will tell you the truth when needed, but will drive for performance. It's like that is a big one for her. And so, you know, I just stay true to my core values, right? That's part of my core values is helping others, unlocking potential, challenging the status quo, driving performance. And it's been consistent as I move from one career opportunity to the next. And staying vibrant with the changes is, you know, I think back, all my teams have become so different. And now I've got all these different generational gaps that are in my team. And I find myself constantly, you know, here's the core, we're going to unlock potential. But then I find myself, okay, how do I communicate? How do I connect with a millennial? How do I connect with the generation that is, you know, 10 years ahead of me and they're like, I'm done, I'm almost out of here? How do I connect with my colleagues who are totally different from me? And so my course continues to be the same. And it's just, how do I connect with other people? It's how that brand continues to stay the same. And I have to change because everybody's not. I go by that platinum rule. You treat folks how they want to be treated, not how I want to be treated, because otherwise there'll be no connection.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tatiana. Laisha, would you like to talk about personal branding?
Sure. I knew for sure you were going to Francis with personal branding. But I would echo Tatiana again. And it's interesting. I'm just listening because I think part of that is accepting that my brand is unique. There's only one Laisha besides the name, right? Which is very unique in and of itself. But my experiences, my skill sets, my perspectives, those things are what are part of my personal brand. And similar to what Tatiana shared in terms of those skill sets, for me, it's always been comfortable being kind and empathetic. Those are just core values for me. And I can drive for results and still be a leader that is both kind and empathetic. I think it's also leading from the front. I've always lived by not asking someone else to do something that I wouldn't do myself. If I wouldn't do it, then I shouldn't be asking someone on my team to do it. And if I'm not willing to help, I probably need to reconsider how I'm leading and if I'm really leading from the front. And then I think the other piece is recognizing there's no I in team, and that learning is part of my brand. Being an agile learner I've always had a thirst for knowledge, always reading, listening to podcasts, just trying to understand different parts of the business, whether it's finance, like Francis, which wasn't always my strength in that sense, or a new industry, going into gas when I was in human resources for quite a bit of time. So I think your personal brand is always going to travel with you. It is that core set of values. But I think we would be doing a disservice to ourselves if we thought personal brand meant complacency. Your core values may not change, but you have to be agile. You have to learn. You have to be willing to be dynamic and responsive. So Your brand can stay the same, but as our industry is changing and what we're driving for is changing, you have to be willing to complement those core values with other skill sets. So part of that learning agility as a personal brand for me is what really helps me to lead from the front. I think they're changing, and sometimes when it's changing, we're not sure if we're going left or right. And so being able to be agile in that sense is important.
Thank you, Elijah. Francis or Robin, anything to add about brand?
I guess what I would add, Tatiana said consistent, and I think that's really important. And the other thing I think that's really important is that you're genuine, right? So your personal brand should be who you are, what you stand for, how you act. And I think that's where people could maybe get themselves into trouble when they try and brand themselves as something that people would say, well, she doesn't act that way, right? So that's the genuine and the consistent, I think, is really important.
Thank you, Francis. So the next question is about personally encountering a barrier to inclusion at work and how you overcame that situation. So, in your day to day, being sometimes the only woman in the room or at the table, given the industry that we're in, we may encounter things that are barriers. How have you overcome that? Laisha, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. Um, I guess, and I think we all define inclusion in our own ways. For me, it really is ensuring that we all feel included, that every voice is heard, and it really does matter. But maybe one example where I maybe didn't confront it as best as I could have, but it really turned into how I lead. So I remember, and I think, Francis, you mentioned this. I remember being in a meeting and we were going through the results of an investigation, and I shared a recommendation and kind of some next steps. And the conversation just kept flowing. It was as if I had never spoken. And then by the time we got to the end of the meeting, it was the same recommendation and the same next steps. Now, years later, I probably would have said, I thought I said that earlier. But in that moment, I didn't have the courage at the time. But I also almost rationalized it and said, well, maybe they really needed to hear from my leader, from my GM. Maybe there was just a bit more credibility. It wasn't me. It was just, maybe it was just more around the hierarchy of leadership. So fast forward, I think the lesson that showed me is that there are many people like me who in that moment might not speak up. So the best way to ensure that we don't have to speak up when you're in a position of leadership is to create the environment where the opportunity is there for everyone. And being vulnerable and transparent enough that if I misstep, I can apologize. If I didn't acknowledge someone or didn't hear someone, I can apologize. And I'm constantly looking for feedback on if I truly am creating the type of environment that I believe I'm creating. Because although that was an instance, too many of those instances can certainly cause us to disengage. And I've used it as a way to make sure that I don't create that environment for others. And then I'll just share very quickly a second one that we overcame as a team was probably more recently with um, the George Floyd murder and conversations that we undertook afterwards. We had a whole series around courageous conversations and things we did as a company. But I remember expecting that I might get the question, "How are you doing? How are things?" And that question didn't come maybe as quickly as I thought it would. And I started to feel like not included. I started to feel like maybe I'm not being recognized for who I am and how I show up. But we ultimately did have the conversation. And what I learned from that is as difficult it was for me to talk about it, it was equally as difficult for someone to ask. Even though we had a great relationship, it just wasn't a good conversation. So I learned in that moment that there's also a need for some grace. We have to be willing to share and to listen and to be vulnerable. So I think for that one, I shared how it made me feel, which was awkward at work, talking about how you feel about, not being asked or conversations around something that was so significant. Um, but confronting it for me, I think drew our relationship closer and it became conversations around inclusion and diversity are important and we are examples of it as a leadership team.
Thank you, Laisha. And that leads us into the next question. And Francis, I'll ask you this. Why is diversity important? Laisha, thank you for that transition.
So I think diversity is hard. right? It's easy to lead when you surround yourself with people that potentially look like you, but certainly agree with you. And then you just get what you want. When you have diversity of people's backgrounds, their gender, their ethnicity, their work history, their family situations, you come to the table with very different perspectives. And I think that if people are truly open to those different perspectives and understanding what other people have gone through, you can come to a better conclusion. And I think that applies to everything. I think it applies to work. I think it applies to life. And you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you haven't experienced. And if you're not open to really understanding what someone else is thinking and their perspective, I think you can have tunnel vision. And I believe that the only way to get to that better place is to have diversity.
Thank you, Frances. Robin or Tatiana, anything to add around diversity or inclusion?
Just to echo what Frances was saying, I just had an experience very recently. We're working on a transportation project now, and we had our construction team in, we had our technology team in, we had everybody in working on a schedule, and the team is mostly made up of men, but a broad cross section of people, different backgrounds, different places. And everyone's laying out what they have planned and what's going on. And one of the gentlemen stands up and says to me, "Yeah, we think we're gonna make this on time. We're gonna avoid hitting the Christmas holidays." And I have a young woman who works for me who happens to be an observant Jewish woman, and she said, "You guys forgot about Hanukkah." And all the guys were like, "What do you mean?" And she was like, "You've scheduled work on Hanukkah, and Hanukkah's a holiday for us." And everyone at the table was like, "Oh my God." And so, one of the things that I recognize from that is a lot of times in diversity, you're blind to the things that you're blind to because they're not within your kind of sphere or area. And it's not necessarily all the time for bad reasons. It's not necessarily that people are trying to push people to the side, but you need to have different voices in the room. You need to have different perspectives. You need to have different backgrounds so that people can identify things and areas where others may be blind to them.
Thank you for that, Robin. Tatiana?
Yeah, I totally agree with what's been stated. Sometimes I've got biases and I can't see what's in front of me, and having different perspective helps me with a greater and broader understanding of what is it I'm trying to solve. And then we talk about diversity as when we talk about minorities, right? So it's about being fair in that perspective, and having the opportunity to play in that playground like everybody else is what I have been very vocal about at National Grid when it comes to diversity. That we all just have an equal playing field and same opportunities to do the same type of work as everybody else.
Great. Thank you, ladies. So next question I have is, if you think about your roles right now and we talk about diversity, how will things look in the future? How will they look differently? Frances, would you share that with us? And what role will women play in that new future?
So I hope the importance of diversity will just continue to grow and to be the acceptable standard. I look back at the beginning of my career. I came out of politics where the rooms were often very diverse because if they weren't, you didn't win. And that was the beginning of my career. And then I moved into the utility business at a time when I was often the only woman in the room. As a more mid-level woman, it was my perspective that the more senior women were not particularly helpful or mentors, or some of them enjoyed being the only woman in the room. I mean, we've all heard the term queen bee, right? When I came to Con Edison, I felt that the company was much more focused on women. You know, a woman CFO, a woman general counsel in the past, 3 women on the board 20 years ago. And I came in and tried to, and Nyasha actually helped me with this initiative. I tried to turn around and look at the management women behind me and help them. And one of the things I always said to them is, you know, I want you to turn around and look at the women behind you and help those women. So I've really seen the growth of mentorship and helping and diversity in a way that really I don't think existed 20 years ago. And, you know, they say every crisis should be an opportunity. I think we saw that some this year, that things are being talked about that were not talked about before the killing of George Floyd, which is a good thing. Not the killing of George Floyd, but maybe talking about these things. And I just hope that we continue to do that, and for everyone to start to really internalize and understand that diversity is a value and brings a much better place to live and work for everyone.
Thank you, Frances. Tatiana, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I want to add that it's very, very important that we play a supportive role of each other. Being that queen bee by yourself is not fun, right? And I think often people put on facade because they think they've got it all and they can handle it all and manage it all. It's way too hard up here. I am telling you. So I have a support of people that I can call at any time to lift me up and help me with whatever issues I've got going on. And I'm always pulling folks up behind me. It is our job to be pulling other women up behind us into the ranks, into leadership roles when we can. And it's important that we support each other at all levels. Crabs in a barrel gets us nowhere as a group. Nowhere. Working together will make us bigger and stronger.
Thank you for that, Tatiana. And Frances, you both echo the same sentiment about the work. You know, once you get there, it's the responsibility to turn around and help bring others along also. You know, and Frances, you also mentioned this summer and some of the events of this summer, and in particular, the killing of George Floyd. That's been a pivotal moment for not only our company, but our country. Also in 2020, another huge event that we've been impacted by is COVID. And Robin, I'd like to hear from you, particularly in your industry also. What are the COVID-related energy impacts that you're seeing today, and how does this set the stage going forward? Like, we're seeing a lot on the news, ridership is down, just the way things are happening.
Yeah.
So can you share with us about that?
Absolutely. You know, I think we're seeing it's, you know, beyond saying historic impacts in terms of, you know, the transportation network and just the ways in which people's use and approach to transportation has really changed. You know, we are seeing near-term cost and consumption declines, the same as the rest of the market is seeing. But in addition to that, we're also seeing, you know, a huge amount of behavioral changes that we're not sure when they're going to, or when or if they're going to ever go back to what was before. You know, people are, we're seeing a lot more people in their cars. And so, you know, our vehicles coming across our crossings, the numbers have still remained high. We are seeing, though, a very different transportation patterns, less of a rush hour and more of a rush day where you have just consistent traffic flow throughout the day. And, you know, we believe that's because people are modifying, you know, they're going in, if they're going into their offices, they're going in for shorter periods of time. They're going in earlier and leaving earlier, or going in later and leaving later. So, what it's meant for us is that, you know, we really are having to rethink the way that we're approaching the world post COVID-19. And, how is bus transportation going to be different? How is vehicular transportation going to be different? What are people going to want or need from us? And what is that going to mean for us in terms of providing opportunities and providing energy for them? Right now we do have a time in our bus terminals where the terminal kind of shuts down more or less for the evening. We may not see that going forward. You may have people who are doing local commutes who are saying, I'll start my day in the office at 5:30 or 6 a.m. if I can leave at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and get home. And so that's going to completely change the way we look at providing services to people.
Thank you for that, Robin. And Francis, what do you see as the future of the energy business? How does that look?
I think it's going to be a lot of renewables for our customers. And I think for our employees, it's going to be a lot of new thinking, because I think we're an industry that tends to be conservative and tends to have certain rules and ways of working, and that's just the way we do things. And I think that's going to be a big area of conversation going forward, because as Robin said, people are going to be working differently. I think that's going to continue, and I think employees are going to want to work a different way. I think about things like at the beginning of this in March, all the employees who had small children, who had to set up schools at home or set up daycare at home, like making those people work a 9 to 5 day or an 8:30 to 6 day, it just was not practical, right? I mean, I had people that were working from 6 to 9 at night because they were doing school during the day. I think some of that will change as we get a vaccine and we hopefully go back to somewhat of a more normal life. But I don't think it's going to go back to what it was. I was at Fort Irving looking at some space where some of my employees sit, and found myself thinking, like, we were the first open space. So it was a long time ago. Like, there's going to be a picture of this in the Smithsonian Institute saying this is the way people used to work, right? People are just not going to do it. And I think given the dynamic nature of our business, if we can meet the changing needs of the workforce and continue to recruit the best and the brightest, the energy business is going to be fascinating going forward, because it is completely changing.
Thank you for that. And with that question, Laija, with all of the changes that we're seeing in society, industry, our company, how do you retool yourself? We're talking about the new talent that's coming in. Well, we're here, right? And we're faced with dealing with these challenges. So how do you retool to continue to lead from the front?
I think you could tap into maybe an answer that Robin and Francis gave on other questions, which spoke to recognizing what you don't know and being comfortable in knowing that there are some things that we don't know, but then preparing yourself and building that knowledge. So I think retooling has to do with how do you stay informed on what's going on in the industry, whether it's industry committees, are you participating in seminars and opportunities, whether it's executive education, or now you can do everything online, right? You can go to so many webinars and so many podcasts, and not just on the topics that you're already well informed of or the things that you like to hear about, but stepping out of that space and going into areas that maybe I'm not as knowledgeable or not as comfortable. And from just career progression, moving into different organizations, you have to learn different parts of the business. So retooling is really kind of hand in hand with your own personal development. But I think also we talked about mentoring. That's a two-way relationship. I learn a lot from the people who I'm in mentoring relationships with. I already mentioned whether it's podcasts or webinars, seminars, but I think also learning from my team, right? That's the beauty of it, is that there's so many different skill sets. There's so many points of view and perspectives that we bring to the table. So learning is 24/7. It's nonstop. And when you're leading from the front, particularly in times of change, I think we all can attest that how we are responding makes a difference. Our teams are always taking our temperature. How's she responding? Is she panicking? Is this a good move? Is it, like what's happening? Because they're looking to us. We kind of live and we lead in a fishbowl. So when you're leading from the front, it's not, it's okay with saying, I don't know all the answers. Things are changing. I'm communicating as change is happening. And guess what? We're going to learn together. There are some things that we will need as a team, whether it's attracting talent, using the talent we have, changing our business, adopting the COVID, the energy of the future, electric vehicle. There's so much that this hasn't been written before. So the only thing we can do is learn and to grow and step into it together with an open mind. So for me, that's important. When you talk about retooling, it really is connected to being an agile learner, like recognizing we don't know it all and we're going to need to grow into that.
Thanks, Laisha. So I have one final question I'm going to ask all of you. That's our formal questions. And then there's a few questions from the audience that I'll also offer up to you all. So Tatiana, I'm going to start with you on this question. What piece of professional advice would you give to women in general?
One, I would say, be very clear what you want out of life. And I say life first, because once you've got that understood, you then find the career that fulfills that for you in life. Because oftentimes you start to working, and for me specifically, oh, you'd be good at this and you'd be good at that and you'd be good at this and you should do this and you should do that, and not really tying it back to like, really, what do I want out of life? And so I would say, what is it that you want out of life? Then the career will come that matches those values for you in life. And two, go for it. Take the risk. It's going to be okay. Just have some friends around you to support you through it. It's not as scary as you think. When you are looking for a job and you see the list of 10 qualifications and you start to check, did you have all 10? Don't do it. Don't do it. Check off 3 and then apply. Just apply for it. Because oftentimes employers put qualifications together thinking they want one thing, and then they start to talk to you and they're like, oh, this person brings a different value or different skill set to the job, and I can wait till later to train them on these other qualifications that it may need. So don't bother yourself to those 10 qualifications. Take the 3, go ahead and apply for it and take the risk.
Yes, thank you, Tatiana. Robin, how would you answer that question? What's a piece of advice you'd share?
I would tell people, we're all born with this desire to be creative and to think our way through problems. And when we're little kids, we're running around pretending to be, today I'm going to be a princess. Today I'm going to be a doctor or a scientist or whatever. And I feel like a lot of people grow up and they lose that creativity and they tamp down, the thought that they can kind of will themselves into something else. You can create something in your mind and say, hey, this is what I want to do, and then make it happen. And so I would just encourage people to be creative and to not approach problems as if they were these horrible things, but to think of them more like games. It's, problem solving should be fun. It should not be the kind of thing that if you're sitting with your team and you're trying to noodle through something, think about how to make this something that people can really approach in a much more creative and thoughtful way, and not as like, oh my God, we're sitting here and we have to figure something out. In my world, that kind of creativity is what brings us things like the Oculus. It's someone sitting there and thinking about grand ideas and grand designs and not just trying to say, oh, I need to put a box here to put people inside of it. So I really encourage people to just be creative as they're moving forward and thinking about what they want to be and how they want to get there.
Great. Thank you, Robin. And Francis?
I guess I don't have a whole lot to add because I think what the three of you said was quite brilliant. Um, I think what I'd say is sort of a form of what you've already said, but like just really, really be open to everything. You know, be open to the job opportunity that you think you might not be good enough for. Be open to a new perspective that you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. We don't do it that way. Be open to new situations and new opportunities and new experiences. And because I think truly being open really allows you to be a better person and and to experience things that you may have missed otherwise. And if you're in a situation where it's harder because you're a woman, sometimes that's real. And just keep pushing through because there are a lot of people, I think, that are supportive today and ask for help.
Thank you all. So I'm going to take some questions from the viewers. So Francis, this question is for you, and it's about the power. You know, someone is asking, so what if you do not get what you've asked for? Do you stop asking or find another way to get it? Please share your thoughts.
So I think you should consider both, right? So if you don't get it, think about why you didn't get it. Is it reasonable why you didn't get it? Is it unreasonable why you didn't get it? Do you need to tweak something to get it? Um, I would, as a first step, I would not stop asking for it. But I would question yourself about the reasonableness. And then if you continue to believe it's a reasonable request, then think about what else you need to do to go at it a different way.
Thank you for that. And so there's another question here to, any of the panelists. How can we encourage, support, and increase the number of young women in grades K through 12 to pursue STEM-related careers?
Well, as someone who's spent a fair amount of time working with schools and trying to do just that, one of the things that I would say is really encouraging young women, especially in the very early grades, first, second, third, fourth grade, someone who enjoys math, who has a facility, encourage them. I know so many women who, when they were in school and they were in elementary school, math was their favorite subject. And then all of a sudden you get to junior high school and it's like, well, it's not really as great when the boys find out that I know the answers and they don't. Maybe I shouldn't say an answer. And I think a lot of young ladies get kind of turned off from math at that point. I also think that, people think about themselves being in careers based upon what they're exposed to. And so it's also important to make sure that we're giving young women role models and introducing them to opportunities. I'm working on the Billion Oyster Project with the New York Harbor School. We have kids, high school kids in New York, that are doing professional diving, putting oysters in New York Harbor. And, there's two young ladies that I met. They were from the Bronx. They didn't know how to swim when they got to the school.
Mm.
They're now going to get their diving certificates. So you have to provide exposure to these industries. You have to provide exposure to the types of careers that can come, and then you just turn the kids loose, and they'll follow their way there.
Great, thank you. Laisha, did you want to say something?
Nicole, yes, echoing what Robin said, but I would also add, I think it's important to be present, to participate in programs, to be examples, right? We are all walking a trail that was laid before us. And so I think we have a huge responsibility to reach back and to give back. And part of that is showing up and showing that there are women in different parts of the energy industry, and there are opportunities, and there's so many options from a career perspective. And I think many of our companies, I know we do at kind of Edison, but supporting those programs, right? So when you look at, even if we go into AABE, the summer academy, the energy academies that are available in our schools, in our elementary schools, those are opportunities where if we carved out some time to either participate and or support, however that looks for you, that is a way where we can make a tangible impact and make a difference and be an example. There are many young women who have not seen women in the energy utility space, who don't understand the many opportunities in this space. And if we can be part of sharing and exposing, I think that equally has an impact, along with the educational discipline and the programs that are necessary to kind of build up that opportunity for our young women.
Thank you, Aisha. So another question from a viewer is asking, is it true that decisions are made about you in rooms without you? I'd like to know how each of you discovered what rooms to focus on to amplify your skill set and value that you bring to the organization. So it's really about, how you show up.
So yes, there was a lot of conversations with you not in the room. That's why it's very critical that you have sponsors, which are different from mentors. The sponsor is one that can speak on the behalf of your work and your integrity and who you are as a leader when you're not in the room and other opportunities are being put in front of the team or executives. And so, yes, that happens. And it's all about what we said earlier, your work ethic, your core value, and who knows you, right? I grew up in front of the computer, put your head down, get your work done, and you will be seen. That is not true. In a company of 17,000 employees, if I stay behind my desk and put my head down, they will never know who I am. So, yes, I got the work done. Yes, I invited people to see my work, and I had to go network because I didn't know who was going to be that sponsor voice for me in that room when I wasn't there. So you do have to have some sponsors and create a networking and let people know what you're doing. I know sometimes it's hard for us, to quote unquote brag, but it's not bragging. It's just telling them this is what you bring to the table. This is your value. This is your worth. And this is how you make things happen for the organization. And it's okay for others to know that.
Thanks, Tatiana. So with just a few minutes left before we close at 1:00, this has been a very insightful and this hour has moved really quickly, just talking with each of you. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our viewers with, something that, wasn't covered maybe in our questions, but just something that you think is important as a leader in your field to share with others? So Frances, we'll start with you. I'm kind of going the way I see you on my screen.
So I guess I would just say, sometimes I think as women, we think, we have to work harder to be in the room. I think we also should think about keeping in the forefront of our minds those things that we really bring to the table as women that are so valuable and potentially different than what men bring to the table. And I believe in the world now and where it's going, what traditionally has been called the soft skills are not so soft. And perhaps women may be particularly expert at some of those things. And having the courage to speak up and to find your place in that room, it's very satisfying when you see how you have moved something to a better place. And I think we should all keep doing it.
Thanks, Frances. And I've heard the term now, which I think is great, soft skills are now being referred to as essential skills. So absolutely to your point. Robin, what about you? Final words?
I just want to circle back to something Frances said earlier, which is, the best thing that anyone can do is to be authentic and to bring their authenticity to their experience. To live the brand that you want to have, but to, have your work represent who you are. You manage the way that you think is best for who you are. Not all of us operate the same way. Some people manage in different ways just because something's successful for someone doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be successful for you. So, at all times and in everything, we as women do, we should be thinking about bringing our authentic selves. If that means sometimes it's a little, softer, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I would just encourage people to just be authentic and be themselves.
Thank you, Robin. Tatiana?
So there was a lot of good nuggets shared today in this hour. I mean, even I was taking notes to remind myself. Yes. And so with all that, one of the things I just touch upon is knowing your worth, right? Always know your worth and do not back down from it. I've been in conversations where I thought they were trying to make me crazy. Like, is this? And I'm like, no, you know your work ethic, you know what you bring to the table. Stand in your worth, stand in your value, be that good leader, and your followers will come, and it will be all worth it to you. Stay in that authentic zone.
Thanks, Tatiana. And Laisha?
I too am taking notes, Tatiana. I have lots of things on my pad here. This has been great. And I think what I would say kind of culminates all of what was already said. Embracing your authenticity, like recognizing that we are all different and who you are is more than enough. And I think part of that goes to maybe not overthinking. I will share personally that sometimes I can think myself out of an opportunity or think myself out of a decision or write the email 500 times before I hit send because I've tried to read it in every single way that I could to try to be perfect. And we are imperfect. That is part of who we are. But I think while you embrace your authenticity and don't over question, recognize that there are lessons and gains that come from the failures. Everything will not be a success. But if we don't try and we only operate in a space where we think we're going to be successful, I think that's where the missed opportunity is. We have to stretch and lean in on who we are and apply your skills that you have and learn some new ones along the way.
Thank you for that. So as we wrap up and just some closing thoughts and words that I was writing down to kind of just capture the essence of all that you shared with us this afternoon. And I came up with actually 4 C's. And those things were showing up with courage, because to be in the industry that we're all in, to do the work that you're doing, to sit in the seats at the tables that you sit at requires courage. And, sometimes we doubt ourselves, but knuckling in and saying, you know what, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm capable of. So courage was the first one. The importance of communication, communicating what you want, what you're looking for, what you expect, and what your standards are. So communication was a critical part of what I heard from all of you. And being creative in your thinking about what your role looks like, what you'd like to accomplish, and just how you fit in to things that are happening around. And then the last part is about connection, but I wrote the word community. So you all shared the importance of being women leaders, in pulling others up and along, encouraging others, networking, building mentoring relationships, sponsorship, and the importance of that. So community, courage, communication, and being creative. And I'll leave with the term Laisha just shared. For all the other women out there, aspiring leaders and leaders, who you are is enough. So I'd like to thank you all and just thank Abe for allowing us the opportunity to hear from some powerful women in the industry that we're in. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone and wish you all a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.